A royal guard is tasked with looking after the king's favorite dog, a mischievous corgi named Buttercup, during a hunting trip. When the corgi runs off into the woods chasing a rabbit, the guard spends hours searching, calling Buttercup's name. What the guard finds next shocks him, leaving him worried about the consequences to come. Please support the channel by leaving a like, subscribing, and clicking on the notification bell. Buttercup, the king's beloved corgi, was infamous throughout the castle for her endless energy and mischievous antics. Small but sturdy, with a wagging tail that never seemed to stop, she was both a source of joy and exasperation for everyone who worked within the royal walls. Sir Alden, one of the younger royal guards, had always managed to avoid any direct interaction with Buttercup. But that all changed the morning he was summoned to the king's chamber. Standing at attention, Alden was surprised when the king, with a twinkle in his eye, informed him of his new duty, caring for Buttercup during the royal hunting trip. Alden didn't argue. You didn't argue with the king, especially not when he seemed unusually enthusiastic about this assignment. With a respectful bow, Alden accepted the leash that the king handed him, Buttercup already tugging at it with excitement. The hunting trip would take the royal party deep into the forest surrounding the castle, and Buttercup's job, apparently, was to keep the king company. Alden's job, on the other hand, was to make sure Buttercup didn't get into trouble. As the hunting party set out, Alden quickly learned that Buttercup had a mind of her own. The corgi darted from one side of the path to the other, barking at squirrels and investigating every bush with determined curiosity. Alden's armor clinked as he struggled to keep up, his hand firm on the leash but his patience already wearing thin. The king, riding ahead on his horse, often glanced back with amusement. "Don't lose her, Alden," he called, laughing as Buttercup made a particularly sharp lunge toward a passing bird. The day progressed in chaotic fashion. While the hunters tracked deer and pheasants, Alden tracked Buttercup, who seemed more interested in the smells of the forest floor than anything else. He found himself running after her on more than one occasion, apologizing to other guards when her barking startled the horses. By midday, Alden was exhausted, and Buttercup, despite her small size, showed no signs of slowing down. It wasn't until late afternoon, as the hunting party reached a small clearing for a break, that disaster struck. Buttercup momentarily let off her leash to stretch her legs, spotted a rabbit darting into the underbrush. Without hesitation, the corgi bolted after it, her short legs surprisingly quick. Alden reacted instantly, calling her name and sprinting after her. But Buttercup didn't stop. She disappeared into the dense forest, her barks growing fainter as she chased the rabbit deeper into the woods. Alden's heart sank. He had one job, to keep Buttercup safe, and he had failed. Without waiting for orders, he plunged into the forest, calling Buttercup's name as he went. The trees closed in around him, the sunlight fading as the thick canopy blocked the sky. He pushed through branches and undergrowth, his armor snagging on thorns, his voice hoarse from shouting. For hours, Alden searched. He followed every sound, every rustle of leaves, only to find himself alone again. Night began to fall, and the forest grew colder. The sounds of the hunting party had long since faded, leaving Alden isolated in the sprawling wilderness. Still, he pressed on, unwilling to return to the king without Buttercup. He couldn't imagine the king's disappointment, or worse, the heartbreak of losing his favorite companion. Just when Alden began to fear the worst, he heard it, a faint, high-pitched bark. He froze, straining to listen. The bark came again, sharper this time, and Alden felt a surge of relief. He followed the sound, his steps quick despite the uneven terrain. After a few minutes, he spotted a small form stuck in a thorny bush, tail wagging furiously. Buttercup had managed to wedge herself in the brambles, her fur tangled and her eyes wide with impatience. "Buttercup!" Alden exclaimed, dropping to his knees to free her. The corgi barked happily, licking his hands as he worked to untangle her from the thorns. Despite his frustration, Alden couldn't help but laugh at her enthusiasm. "You've got more energy than anyone I've ever met," he muttered, finally pulling her free and cradling her in his arms. With Buttercup safe, Alden faced the challenge of finding his way back to the hunting party. The forest was unfamiliar, and the darkness made it difficult to navigate. He held Buttercup close as they walked, her warmth a small comfort in the chilly night. As the hours dragged on, Alden began to doubt he would find the others before morning. Buttercup, sensing his unease, nuzzled against him, her usual energy replaced by a rare moment of calm. Finally, just as dawn broke over the horizon, Alden stumbled into a familiar clearing. The hunting party had set up camp nearby, their torches still glowing faintly in the early light. The king, who had been pacing anxiously, looked up as Alden approached. "Buttercup!" the king exclaimed, rushing forward to take the corgi from Alden's arms. Buttercup barked happily, her tail wagging furiously as she licked the king's face. Alden sank to his knees, exhaustion overtaking him. "I'm sorry, Your Majesty," he said, his voice hoarse. "I let her get away, but I couldn't leave her behind." The king's expression softened. "You did well, Alden. I knew I could trust you with her." From that day forward, Alden's bond with Buttercup grew stronger. The corgi seemed to take a liking to him, often following him around the castle even when he wasn't on duty. Alden, in turn, found himself growing fond of the mischievous little dog. Buttercup's antics, though frustrating at times, reminded him of the importance of patience and persistence. Years later, as Alden rose through the ranks of the royal guard, the story of his long night in the forest with Buttercup became a favorite tale in the castle. The king often recounted it with pride, calling Alden the bravest man he knew, not for fighting battles, but for chasing a corgi through the wilderness without giving up. For Alden, it wasn't just a story. It was a reminder of the unexpected ways loyalty and duty could bring joy, even in the smallest, most chaotic forms. Buttercup remained by the king's side for many years, her wagging tail a constant presence in the castle halls, and Alden never forgot the night he earned her trust and her friendship. As the years went by, Buttercup became something of a legend in the castle, and Sir Alden was forever linked to her story. The other guards often teased him about his special bond with the corgi, but Alden took it in stride. He had grown genuinely fond of her, even if she did have a knack for getting into trouble. Buttercup, for her part, seemed to have adopted Alden as one of her own. Whenever he was on duty, she would trot around the courtyard, inspecting his work as though she were his superior. One particularly memorable day, Buttercup managed to sneak into the armory. Alden, alerted by the sounds of clattering metal, rushed in to find her proudly dragging a knight's gauntlet across the floor. "You can't wear that, you know," he said, laughing as he scooped her up. Buttercup barked indignantly, her tail wagging as if to say she'd been doing something important. Moments like these brightened the sometimes grueling life of a royal guard. Alden often reflected on how such a small creature could bring so much joy not only to the king but to everyone in the castle. Buttercup had a way of making even the most stoic guards crack a smile, and her escapades became a favorite topic among the castle staff. One winter, however, Buttercup fell ill. The corgi, usually so full of energy, lay curled in her bed near the king's chambers, barely moving. The king was distraught, and so was Alden. He couldn't bear to see her like this. The royal physician was called, but there was little he could do. The castle fell into an uneasy silence, the staff and guards anxiously awaiting news. Alden, unwilling to sit idly by, spent hours researching remedies for Buttercup's condition. He remembered stories from his childhood about a rare herb said to restore strength to ailing animals. The herb, however, only grew in the highlands far beyond the castle walls, in the harshest part of winter. Despite the risks, Alden approached the king and volunteered to make the journey. "You would do that for her?" the king asked, his voice heavy with concern. Alden nodded. "She's family to all of us, Your Majesty. I'll bring her back what she needs." The journey was treacherous, the biting cold and snow slowing Alden's progress as he climbed the rugged highlands. He encountered wild wolves and icy cliffs, but pressed on, driven by the thought of Buttercup's wagging tail and the joy she brought to the castle. Finally, after days of searching, he found the herb growing in a sheltered grove. He harvested it carefully and began the long journey home. When Alden returned to the castle, exhausted but triumphant, the royal physician prepared a tonic from the herb and fed it to Buttercup. The change wasn't immediate, but over the next few days, the corgi began to recover. Her tail wagged weakly at first, then more vigorously as her energy returned. Soon, she was back to her old self, barking at squirrels in the courtyard and following Alden around as if nothing had happened. The king was overjoyed and personally thanked Alden in front of the entire court. "You didn't just save Buttercup," the king said. You reminded us all of the power of loyalty and compassion. He presented Alden with a medal for his bravery, though Alden insisted it wasn't necessary. Buttercup, of course, had no idea what all the fuss was about. She simply hopped into Alden's lap during the ceremony, licking his face as if to say, "Good job." From that point on, Alden became a trusted confidant of the king, his bond with Buttercup cementing his place in the royal household. Even as the years passed and Buttercup grew older, she remained as spirited as ever, her presence a constant source of warmth in the castle. Alden often joked that she was the true ruler of the realm, and the king, with a laugh, never disagreed. When Buttercup finally passed away, it was a somber day for the entire kingdom. The castle held a small ceremony in her honor, and the king had a statue of her placed in the royal gardens, where she had loved to roam. Alden, though heartbroken, found solace in the memories they had shared and the knowledge that Buttercup had lived a life full of love and adventure. In the years that followed, Alden rose to become captain of the royal guard, respected not just for his skill and leadership but for his kindness and unwavering loyalty. And while many remembered him for his bravery on the battlefield or his dedication to the crown, those closest to him always knew him as the guard who had chased a mischievous little corgi into the woods and never looked back. Buttercup's legacy lived on in the castle, her statue a reminder of the joy she had brought to everyone she met. And for Alden, her memory remained a source of inspiration, a symbol of the simple but profound impact one small, loyal heart could have on an entire kingdom. As the years rolled on, Alden carried Buttercup's memory like a treasured keepsake. Though the statue in the royal garden served as a visible reminder of her antics and unwavering spirit, it was the countless unseen moments that Alden held closest to his heart. Every time he walked the halls of the castle, he could almost hear the faint echo of her playful barks, her nails clicking on the stone floors as she followed him around. Alden's role as captain of the royal guard brought with it new responsibilities and challenges, but it also offered him a unique place within the royal family. The king, now older and slightly grayer, frequently reminisced about Buttercup during their private talks. "She kept us all grounded, didn't she?" the king would say with a wistful smile. No matter how heavy the crown felt, Buttercup always reminded me what joy looked like. Alden always agreed, though he noticed that the king's health had started to wane. Age had crept up on the ruler, and while his spirit remained strong, his physical strength began to falter. Alden took it upon himself to ensure that every royal outing, public or private, was carried out with the utmost care, determined to protect the king and his legacy as fiercely as he had once protected Buttercup. One day, during a springtime walk in the royal gardens, the king turned to Alden with a thoughtful expression. "Alden," he began, "do you think I'll be remembered the way Buttercup is?" The question startled Alden, who had always viewed the king as a pillar of strength and wisdom. "Your Majesty," Alden replied earnestly, "you've united kingdoms, brought peace to our lands, and led with compassion. You'll be remembered as one of the greatest rulers in history." The king chuckled softly. "Perhaps. But Buttercup, she didn't need treaties or titles. She just gave love, freely and without question. That's a legacy worth remembering." The king's words stayed with Alden long after their conversation ended. It was a testament to the simplicity of Buttercup's impact, a reminder that even the smallest acts of kindness and joy could leave ripples that lasted a lifetime. When the king passed away a few years later, the kingdom mourned deeply. Alden, standing at the forefront of the funeral procession, felt the weight of the moment keenly. As the service concluded, he made his way to the royal gardens, to the little statue of Buttercup. He knelt there, bowing his head in silent reflection. "He's with you now," Alden whispered. "I hope you're both keeping each other company." The king's son, now the new ruler, sought Alden's guidance as he navigated the challenges of leadership. Though Alden felt the ache of years in his own bones, he accepted the role of mentor with the same steadfastness that had carried him through the forest all those years ago. He shared stories of the late king and Buttercup, weaving lessons of loyalty, courage, and humility into every tale. One day, as Alden strolled through the courtyard, he noticed a commotion near the castle gates. A young, scrappy dog, a mutt with mismatched fur and an eager bark, was darting around the guards, wagging its tail and causing quite a scene. Alden couldn't help but smile as he approached. The dog bounded up to him, its tail wagging furiously, and nuzzled against his leg as though it had been waiting for him all along. The sight brought an unexpected warmth to Alden's chest. He knelt down, scratching the dog behind the ears. "Well," he said with a chuckle, "looks like Buttercup sent me a reminder to keep things interesting." The young king, watching from a balcony above, called down with a grin, "Looks like you've got a new partner, Alden." The mutt quickly became a new fixture in the castle, earning a reputation as Buttercup's spiritual successor. Alden, despite his advancing years, found himself rejuvenated by the dog's playful energy. Together, they roamed the castle halls, the gardens, and even the training grounds, bringing joy to everyone they encountered. As Alden neared the end of his own journey, he reflected on the countless lives he had touched and the memories he had made. He thought of Buttercup, the king, and all the moments that had shaped his life. His heart swelled with gratitude, not for the titles he had earned or the battles he had won, but for the simple, unspoken bonds that had given his life meaning. On a quiet evening, as the sun set over the castle, Alden sat beneath the statue of Buttercup in the gardens. The young dog, now his constant companion, lay at his feet, dozing peacefully. Alden closed his eyes, letting the warmth of the moment wash over him. And as the first stars appeared in the twilight sky, he could almost swear he heard Buttercup's bark, soft and full of mischief, echoing through the stillness. The faint bark lingered in Alden's mind, stirring a bittersweet smile on his weathered face. As the night deepened, the young dog at his feet stirred, nuzzling against him for comfort. Alden gently patted its head, murmuring softly, "You've got big paws to fill, little one. But I think Buttercup would have liked you." The next morning, Alden awoke in the gardens, feeling a surprising lightness in his chest. He stood, stretching against the stiffness in his joints, and gazed at Buttercup's statue. "You'd laugh at me now, wouldn't you?" he muttered. "Sleeping out here like a boy on his first watch." The young dog barked in response as if to agree, and Alden chuckled. Though his steps had slowed with time, Alden remained dedicated to his duties. He became a cherished mentor to the younger guards, often gathering them in the courtyard to share stories of the late king and Buttercup. He spoke not of grand battles or royal decrees, but of the little things, the quiet lessons in loyalty and kindness that Buttercup had embodied. "Strength isn't just in your sword arm," he would say. "It's in how you choose to use it. Buttercup taught me that better than anyone." The young guards hung on every word, eager to hear about the dog who had once ruled the castle in her own mischievous way. They took inspiration from Alden's tales, many of them striving to emulate his balance of discipline and compassion. The young dog, now named Patch for the uneven coloring of its coat, often sat beside Alden during these sessions, becoming something of a mascot for the new generation of guards. One crisp autumn morning, the young king called Alden to his chambers. The king, now confident in his role as ruler, had grown into a wise and compassionate leader, much like his father. He regarded Alden with fondness, as a trusted advisor and a friend. "Sir Alden," the king began, "you've served this kingdom with unmatched loyalty for decades. I think it's time you allowed yourself some rest." Alden tilted his head, a playful glint in his eye. "Your Majesty, are you suggesting I retire?" The king smiled. "Not suggesting, insisting. You've earned more than your share of peaceful days, Alden. But if you think I'm letting you leave entirely, you're mistaken. Your wisdom is needed here, and always will be." Alden nodded, recognizing the truth in the king's words. He wasn't as spry as he once was, and the thought of a quieter life in the castle gardens held a certain appeal. "As you wish, your Majesty," he replied with a bow. Though he no longer donned his armor daily, Alden's presence remained a constant in the castle. He often spent his mornings walking the gardens, sharing stories with visiting children, or enjoying Patch's antics as the dog chased butterflies and squirrels. In the evenings, he sat by Buttercup's statue, reflecting on the life he had lived and the people and animals who had shaped it. One day, a young boy approached him in the gardens, his wide eyes full of wonder. "Sir Alden," the boy asked, "is it true you once ran through the woods all night just to save Buttercup?" Alden smiled warmly, leaning forward to meet the boy's gaze. "It's true," he said. "She led me on quite the adventure, that one. But she also taught me something important." "What's that?" the boy asked eagerly. "That even the smallest creatures can leave the biggest mark on our hearts," Alden replied, ruffling the boy's hair. "And that loyalty isn't something you wear like a crown. It's something you carry here." He placed a hand over his chest. The boy nodded seriously, as though committing Alden's words to memory. "I want to be loyal like you someday." Alden chuckled. "Then you're already on the right path, lad." As the years passed, Alden watched the kingdom flourish. The young king's reign was marked by peace and prosperity, and the castle bustled with life. Patch, now a seasoned but still spirited dog, remained by Alden's side, a living reminder of the bond he had once shared with Buttercup. On a quiet spring morning, as the first blooms appeared in the garden, Alden sat beneath Buttercup's statue, Patch curled at his feet. The sun warmed his face, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of fresh flowers. Closing his eyes, Alden let out a contented sigh. When the guards found him later, they saw the peaceful smile on his face and knew he had passed on to join those he had loved and served. The news spread quickly, and the castle mourned the loss of its beloved Captain Alden. The king himself led the memorial, standing beside Buttercup's statue as he spoke of Alden's unwavering loyalty and quiet strength. "He taught us all what it means to serve," the king said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. "And he reminded us that the smallest acts of kindness can shape the greatest legacies." A new statue was placed beside Buttercup's in the garden, a likeness of Alden, standing tall with a warm expression, Patch by his side. The two statues faced each other, as if caught in an eternal moment of companionship. Generations to come would visit the garden, hearing tales of Buttercup, Patch, and the loyal guard who had followed his heart through the forest and beyond. Though Alden was gone, his legacy lived on in the hearts of the people he had served, and in the quiet bond between man and dog that had taught them all the true meaning of loyalty. Years passed, and the garden where Buttercup and Alden statues stood became a place of pilgrimage for those seeking inspiration. It was not uncommon to find children playing around the statues, their laughter echoing through the royal grounds. Young guards would sit nearby during their training breaks, reflecting on the stories of Alden's devotion and the small corgi who would capture the hearts of an entire kingdom. The garden became more than just a monument. It became a symbol of unity and humility, reminding people that greatness often arose from the simplest acts of kindness and perseverance. Festivals were held in the garden every year to honor the memory of Alden and Buttercup, and the royal family would lead the celebrations, sharing tales of loyalty and courage passed down through generations. Patch, now an old and gray dog, remained a beloved figure in the castle. Though his movements slowed with age, his spirit never dimmed. He was particularly fond of sitting beside Alden's statue, as if keeping watch over the man who had been his closest companion. The royal family cared for him deeply, and the younger children would often bring him treats or sit by his side, stroking his fur as they listened to stories about Alden and Buttercup. One day, Patch didn't wake from his nap beneath the statues. He passed away peacefully, surrounded by the garden he had called home. The castle mourned him deeply, but his memory was celebrated with the same reverence given to Alden and Buttercup. A small marker was placed beside the statues, inscribed with the words, "Faithful Companion," forever part of the story. As the kingdom continued to flourish, the garden grew even more vibrant, its flowers tended by gardeners who considered it an honor to care for such a sacred space. Travelers from far and wide came to see the statues and hear the tales of Buttercup, Alden, and Patch. For many, the story became a source of hope, a reminder that loyalty, love, and courage could overcome even the greatest of challenges. Decades later, when the kingdom faced a time of uncertainty, the young ruler, Alden's great-grandchild, found solace in the garden. Sitting beneath the statues, she traced the carved details of Alden's face and Buttercup's playful stance. She remembered the stories passed down through her family and felt a renewed sense of purpose. They weren't just legends, she whispered to herself. They were real. They lived, they cared, and they believed in something bigger than themselves. Inspired by the legacy of loyalty and courage left behind by Alden and Buttercup, the young ruler made decisions that brought the kingdom together once more. She invoked their story during speeches, rallying her people with a memory of those who had come before. In the end, the story of Alden and Buttercup transcended time. It became woven into the very fabric of the kingdom, a tale told not just in the castle, but in every village and hamlet. Children grew up learning that even the smallest beings, like Buttercup, could make a difference, and that true greatness was found in acts of loyalty and love. The garden remained a sacred place, its statues weathered by time but never forgotten. And though Alden, Buttercup, and Patch were long gone, their spirits lived on in every act of kindness, every pledge of loyalty, and every heart that chose to believe that the smallest gestures could shape the greatest legacies. What do you think made Alden's bond with Buttercup so special? Was it his unwavering loyalty, her mischievous charm, or the way they both taught the kingdom that even the smallest acts of kindness can leave the greatest impact? And if you were in Alden's shoes, would you have chased Buttercup into the woods that fateful night? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to like this story if it touched your heart, and subscribe to the channel for more tales of courage, loyalty, and the extraordinary bonds that shape our lives. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for being a part of the journey.